You're listening to Simple Health Radio, the podcast about recognizing medical emergencies and promoting wellness. Your host is Dr. Emron, an experienced ER physician who has treated thousands of people just like you. Information on the show is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Always talk to your doctor or go to the nearest emergency room with any questions you may have.
Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of Simple Health Radio. Today we have a question that was sent in by one of our online followers and a fellow podcaster. Her name is Jennifer Longworth, and she's the executive producer of the Bourbon Barrel Podcasting Organization. She has an amazing podcast and talks about many topics, including bourbon and craft beer, among some other topics each week. Her website is bourbonbarrelpodcasting.com. She sent us a question regarding recent lab work that she just completed with her doctor. Let's take a listen.
Hi, this is Jennifer of Bourbon Barrel Podcasting, empowering Kentuckians to change the world one podcast at a time. Find me at bourbonbarrelpodcasting.com. And my question is, I just had some labs drawn for a cholesterol test, and the doctor called me with my results, and the numbers have gone down, but the number he was concerned about was what he called sugar fat. And of course, I hung up the phone and promptly forgot what he meant by that. So if you could explain what sugar fat is when it comes to cholesterol. And I'm guessing I need to quit eating sugar to take care of that number, but I don't remember. Thank you so much.
First, let me thank Jennifer for sending in a great question. This is something that happens every single day. People go to their doctor, they have labs drawn for one reason or another. It could be a routine checkup. A couple of days later, you might get a call back from your doctor or probably their nurse, and they'll tell you everything is normal except for one number that was a little bit high. And then they don't tell you what that number was, and they don't tell you why it was high. So I completely understand exactly what you're talking about. It can be a little bit frustrating, a little bit confusing with the way that it was presented to you. Now, what I will do first is break down cholesterol, and then I'll answer your question specifically. So when we talk about cholesterol, there's actually 3 or 4 different numbers that we have to keep in mind. So cholesterol isn't just one object. It's not one thing. It's really a combination of several different things. First of all, cholesterol is necessary for the human body. So cholesterol is a chemical that's related to steroids. It's related to hormones. So the body produces cholesterols in order to create other things that are beneficial. So not all cholesterol is bad. We actually do need cholesterol. Typically, we get cholesterol from the foods we eat, and we do know that certain foods that are rich in certain types of fat will have higher amounts of cholesterol. The details that we need to keep in mind are that there's different values, and some values can be normal, and other values can be abnormal. And that's where it's important for a doctor to really break down those numbers and explain it in detail. So that's what we're going to do right now. So the first number is called the total cholesterol. So the total cholesterol is actually made up of 2 separate types of cholesterol. That includes the LDL and the HDL. So the LDL stands for low density lipoprotein, and the HDL stands for high density lipoprotein. Now, what's the difference? Well, the high density lipoprotein, also called the HDL, that's the good cholesterol. So you want the high cholesterol to be high because that one's the high density. That one actually helps to remove some of the bad cholesterol from your arteries, and it's used for healthy skin, healthy nails, and production of testosterone and estrogen and other hormones in the body. Now, the LDL, that's the bad cholesterol. So that's the one that you want to be low. So the LDL is very thick. It has a consistency that becomes worse over time, and that's the one that blocks the arteries, the blood vessels throughout the body, and that's the one that's been linked with heart attacks and stroke and sudden death. So LDL is bad. You want that to be low. HDL is good. You want that one to be high. Now, the other values that we look at are the triglycerides. And I think that's what your doctor was talking about when he mentioned sugar fats. So triglycerides are a special type of fat in the blood. It's very unusual, though, because we think it comes from certain foods, but there are people who don't even eat those foods, and their triglycerides are extremely high. So, for example, people who have a family history of high triglycerides, their numbers can be in the thousands. And these are people who look very skinny, very lean. They eat good food. They might even be vegetarian. They don't eat any meat or other processed foods. And yet, every time they go to the doctor, their triglycerides look awful on paper. many women actually have higher triglyceride levels than men, which is the opposite of some of the other cholesterol types. So we're not quite sure why this happens, but we do think there's a strong genetic link and a strong family history that causes the triglycerides to be very elevated. Now, what are the numbers that we want to consider normal and abnormal? So with the total cholesterol, the numbers have been slowly coming down, especially over the past 5 or 10 years. So previously we used to say anything less than 200 is normal. Now we're at a point where anything less than 170 is considered normal. So if, again, the total cholesterol is the LDL plus the HDL, meaning the good cholesterol plus the bad cholesterol, you want it to be less than 170. You want the HDL to be above 45, and you want the LDL to be less than 100. So again, these are numbers that can change because it depends on what you eat, your exercise, and a lot of other factors, but the lower numbers for the total cholesterol are going to be better for you, and the higher numbers for the HDL will always be better for you as well. Now, some of the things that we talked about with the sugar fats, with the triglycerides, they're very difficult to manage. So your doctor probably wasn't too worried because I'm assuming all your other numbers came back normal, but they might recommend just slightly changing your diet, increasing your amount of healthy foods or other cholesterol-free types of items, but you want to do that carefully because a lot of things that are labeled cholesterol-free or fat-free actually have too much sodium or they may have too much sugar. So you're giving up one bad thing, but you're actually picking up other worse things. And so now as doctors, when we look at lab values and we look at the patient, we actually have to make a judgment call. Is it better for the patient to continue their current lifestyle, keep their numbers in the range that they are, or is it better for them to change that completely and switch to a whole different route? So that's individualized, and only you know best. But in general, I would say if your numbers are good, probably no need to change too much at this point. So I hope that answered some of your questions about the sugar fats. The sugar fats are triglycerides, which again come from food, but probably in your case may be genetic, and they could be related to your family history. But if your LDL is good, meaning it's under good control, and your total cholesterol is low, I think you're going to be hopefully in good shape. If you have any questions, you can go to our website, simplehealthradio.com. You can read the show notes, and you can also read some additional information from other websites and other organizations, including the American Heart Association and some of the National Institutes of Health, which provide guidelines about cholesterol and what the different numbers mean. So thank you so much again, Jennifer, from the Bourbon Barrel Podcasting Organization. You have a great website and a great podcast. I do recommend my listeners check it out and listen to a couple of episodes. Please send us, again, any questions that you may have. Just record it on your iPhone or your computer, include your name and organization, and I'll be happy to include that on next week's episode.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Visit simplehealthradio.com to read the blog, follow links mentioned on this episode, and easily share content with your family and friends. Subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and the 3 and Out Radio Network. Be sure to connect with Dr. Emron on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and Tumblr to send us your questions and ideas.